If saying no feels uncomfortable or risky, you are not alone. Most people struggle with it, not because they don't want to set boundaries, but because they're afraid of what might follow. We fear the conflict. We feel guilty for letting someone down. We worry about damaging relationships or being labeled as unhelpful or difficult. But here's the truth. You can decline without ever using the word no. You can stand your ground, protect your time, and still leave the other person feeling respected. This isn't about avoiding responsibility, it's about taking responsibility for your own limits. Because if you don't, no one else will. And when you master this skill, people won't just respect you more, they'll trust you more, because they'll know your yes actually means something. The first method is the delayed response. You don't have to give an answer in the moment. The pressure to respond instantly is what traps many people into saying yes before they've had time to think. So you simply say, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." That's it. It buys you breathing space. You can evaluate your priorities, decide if it's worth your time, and then give a thoughtful answer. At work, this is especially powerful. If your boss asks you to take on another project, respond with, "I'll review my current deadlines and let you know later today." It signals that you take commitment seriously. Next, redirect the request. Just because you can't do something doesn't mean you leave the other person stranded. Point them toward someone else who might be able to help. If a friend asks you to help them move and you can't, say, "I can't that weekend, but you might want to check with Alex. He has a truck and could help you out." This is a soft refusal. You've declined, but you've still offered value. Psychologically, people appreciate solutions more than just hearing no. Then there's conditional language. This is where you leave the door open, but only on your terms. You might say, "I'd love to, but I can only if," and then outline the conditions that make it possible for you. At work, it could sound like, "I'd be happy to join that client call, but only if it's after 3 p.m. when my meeting ends." With family, maybe, "I'd love to host, but only if it's a potluck." You are being clear about what works for you. If they can meet those conditions, you're in. If not, you've declined without saying it directly. You can also offer a partial commitment. This works when you don't want to take on the full responsibility, but still want to contribute. Say, "I can't handle all of it, but I can do this part." For example, instead of agreeing to bake for the entire school fundraiser, you say, "I can make 2 pies, but I can't cover all the desserts." You're still helpful, but you're not burning yourself out. Finally, one of the most underrated tools, silence with a smile. Sometimes, you don't need to speak at all. If someone asks for something and you pause, holding steady eye contact, staying calm, and simply smiling, the silence often prompts them to reconsider or even retract their request. This works because silence creates a psychological gap they feel compelled to fill, and more often than not, they will adjust their ask. The key in all of these strategies is presence. Steady eye contact, a calm, even tone, and resisting the urge to apologize excessively. One sorry is enough. When you over-apologize, you sound uncertain, and uncertainty invites pressure. Confidence, on the other hand, makes people accept your boundaries without argument. Why we struggle to say no. If saying no ties your stomach in knots, you're not weak, you're human. From the time we're young, we're conditioned to be agreeable. We're told to be polite, to not upset people, to make others happy. And over time, that conditioning turns into a deep, automatic urge to say yes, even when every part of us wants to say no. We fear that declining will trigger conflict, disappoint someone we care about, or make us seem selfish, unhelpful, even cold. That fear doesn't just exist in our heads. It's rooted in the way our brains are wired to seek connection and avoid rejection. We are social creatures, and deep down, we crave approval. So when someone asks for our time, our energy, or our resources, our first instinct is often to agree, just to maintain harmony. But here's the problem with that. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you're giving away pieces of yourself. Your time, your focus, your mental energy, all of it gets chipped away, and before you know it, you're running on fumes. You start feeling resentful, not because of the person who asked, but because you didn't honor your own limits. And here's the hard truth. People won't respect boundaries you don't set. If you never draw the line, they'll keep crossing it, often without realizing they're doing anything wrong. The reason saying no feels so difficult isn't just emotional, it's psychological. We're wired to avoid what's called social discomfort. That's the tension you feel when you know your answer might not be what the other person wants to hear. The discomfort hits your nervous system like a warning signal. Don't create tension, keep the peace. That's why so many people default to a quick yes without even thinking it through. And for some, there's also the identity factor. If you see yourself as the reliable one, the problem solver, the person people can always count on, saying no feels like you're betraying that image. You're not just refusing a request, you're challenging your own sense of self. The irony is, constantly saying yes doesn't make you more respected. It often has the opposite effect. People may come to see your time and energy as endlessly available, which means they stop valuing it. When you never decline, your yes loses its weight. The people who are respected the most aren't the ones who agree to everything. They're the ones who choose carefully what they commit to. When they say yes, it matters. And when they say no, it's respected. We also have to talk about guilt, because guilt is one of the biggest emotional roadblocks here. Guilt makes you feel like you owe people your agreement. It whispers, if you care about them, you should help. But guilt isn't a compass. It's a reaction. And most of the time, it's misplaced. You can care about someone deeply and still not do everything they ask. You can be supportive without sacrificing your own well-being. Then there's the fear of missing out, the what if that makes us hesitate to decline. What if this opportunity never comes again? What if saying no closes a door forever? That scarcity mindset makes us overcommit, even when it doesn't serve us. But here's the truth. Every yes is a no to something else. When you agree to something that drains you, you're saying no to rest, no to personal priorities, no to opportunities that might actually align with your goals. Understanding why we struggle to say no is the first step toward changing it. Once you see the emotional and psychological traps for what they are, conflict avoidance, guilt, fear of judgment, scarcity thinking, you can start making choices from a place of clarity instead of fear. And that's where the real power begins, when you realize that protecting your boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-respect. The delayed response. One of the simplest yet most powerful tools you have when someone makes a request is time. Most people feel they have to answer immediately, and that's exactly when they get trapped into saying yes to something they don't want to do or can't realistically commit to. The moment you feel that pressure, whether it's from your boss, a colleague, a friend, or a family member, you need to pause. Take the decision out of that instant. Give yourself breathing space. That's where the delayed response comes in. Instead of committing on the spot, you simply say, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." Or, "I need to see what I've got going on before I can give you an answer." Those words seem harmless, but they're strategic. They break the momentum of the moment and shift the control back to you. When you use this technique, you're not rejecting anyone outright. You're buying time to think. You're giving yourself the chance to evaluate whether the request aligns with your priorities, your capacity, and your boundaries. This is especially important in professional settings. Let's say your boss asks if you can take on another project. If you respond too quickly with, "Sure," you've just taken on more work without checking how it will impact your other deadlines. But if you say, "Let me review my current projects and I'll circle back with you this afternoon," you're showing that you take your commitments seriously and you don't make promises lightly. That's not being unhelpful, that's being responsible. The same thing applies in personal situations. Maybe a friend texts you asking for a big favor this weekend. If you're already stretched thin, you don't owe them an immediate yes just to avoid awkwardness. You can say, "Let me see how my weekend's shaping up and I'll let you know." This gives you the space to decide if you really can or want to do it, without the guilt of having to back out later. And here's something important. When you don't answer right away, you also get to assess your emotional reaction. If your gut tenses up the second they ask, that's valuable information. That's your instinct telling you this might not be a good idea for you. Psychologically, the delayed response works because it disrupts the expectation of instant compliance. Many people ask for things assuming the answer will be quick and positive. When you step back and take time, you're signaling, without saying it outright, that your time has value and your choices are intentional. And people notice that. Over time, they learn that when you do agree to something, it's because you've thought it through, not because you caved under pressure. The key is to use this tool consistently. Don't reserve it only for big decisions. Practice it with smaller ones too. If someone invites you to lunch and you're unsure, pause and say, "Let me check my day." If a family member asks for help with something minor, pause anyway. Every time you do this, you're training yourself to respond, not react. That's how you start living on your terms, instead of just managing everyone else's demands. Redirect the request. Sometimes the smartest way to say no is to point someone toward a better option. You're not shutting them down, you're guiding them somewhere that might actually serve them more effectively. People often assume that if you can't help, you've left them hanging, but that's not true. A redirection is still a form of help. It's just not help that costs you your time, energy, or focus in a way that throws you off balance. The beauty of this approach is that it preserves the relationship while still holding your boundaries. You're saying, "I can't take this on, but here's another avenue for you to explore." That's leadership. That's problem solving without self-sacrifice. Picture this. Your coworker asks you to handle a task they're struggling with, but you've already got a full workload. Instead of saying yes and drowning in deadlines or saying no and risking friction, you could say, "I can't take this on right now, but have you checked in with Jordan? He's great with this type of project." You've immediately given them a next step. They leave the conversation feeling supported, even though you didn't personally take the job. And here's the thing. Most people don't actually care who solves their problem. They just want it solved. When you give them a viable alternative, you've met that need without compromising yourself. This also works in personal life. Maybe a friend calls asking if you can help them move next weekend. You know that weekend is already slammed for you. Instead of stretching yourself thin, you could respond with, "I wish I could, but I can't that weekend. Have you asked Sam? He's got a truck and might be free." Now, you're still being a friend. You're thinking about their needs and offering a solution. You're just not putting yourself in a position where you end up exhausted or resentful. That balance is critical because resentment is one of the fastest ways to damage a relationship. Redirection isn't about being dismissive. It's about resourcefulness. It says, "I care enough to help you find what you need, but I'm not going to burn myself out in the process." Psychologically, it softens the impact of the refusal because the other person still gets something from the interaction, information, ideas, or a connection they didn't have before. And that keeps the emotional temperature low. There's no abrupt wall of rejection, just a shift in direction. The key to doing this well is tone and delivery. If you sound rushed, annoyed, or cold, the person might interpret your redirection as a brush-off. So you have to deliver it calmly, with steady eye contact, and maybe even a slight smile. Make it clear through your body language that you're engaged and that you genuinely want to help them find an answer, even if you're not the one providing it. That authenticity matters because people can sense when you're just trying to get rid of them versus when you're actually offering a thoughtful alternative. Another thing to remember. Sometimes the person you redirect them to might not be a specific individual, but a resource. If someone asks for your help with something you don't have expertise in, you could say, "I'm not the best person for that, but I know a great website where you can get exactly what you need." Or, "I don't have the bandwidth right now, but there's a workshop coming up that could be perfect for you." By doing this, you're still part of the solution, but you're not carrying the full weight of it. This method works because it reframes the interaction. You're not declining in a way that feels like rejection. You're simply rerouting the request to where it belongs. And in doing that, you protect your own boundaries without damaging trust, respect, or connection. In fact, you might even strengthen it because the person walks away knowing you're someone who cares enough to help them get where they need to go without sacrificing your own limits. Use conditional language. Sometimes the most effective way to protect your boundaries is to frame your response in a way that leaves the door open, but only on your terms. This is where conditional language becomes incredibly powerful. Instead of giving an outright no or a reluctant yes, You anchor your agreement to specific circumstances that work for you. This shifts the dynamic immediately. You're no longer passively accepting whatever is being asked. You're actively defining the conditions under which you can participate. And when you do this, you make it clear that your time and energy are not up for negotiation unless they align with what you can realistically and willingly give. For example, imagine your manager asks you to take on an extra client presentation. Instead of saying, "Sure, I'll do it," even though you're already stretched thin, you respond with, "I'd be happy to, but only if we can schedule it after 3 p.m. when my other meeting ends." You're not rejecting the request. You're offering a version of it that fits into your schedule without derailing your other responsibilities. In that one sentence, you've communicated cooperation, boundaries, and respect for your own workload. That's professional self-respect in action. In personal life, it might look like this. A family member asks you to host dinner for the holidays. You know that cooking an entire meal for a large group is going to be overwhelming, so you say, "I'd love to host, but only if we make it a potluck." Again, you've shifted the request so it's manageable for you. You're still involved, still contributing, but you've removed the part of the request that would push you past your limits. The brilliance of conditional language is that it doesn't trigger the same defensive reaction in people that a hard no often does. Instead of feeling shut down, they hear a potential yes, but one that comes with terms. And those terms aren't demands. They're boundaries framed in a collaborative way. Psychologically, it keeps the interaction positive and forward-focused rather than adversarial. The way you deliver this matters just as much as the words you choose. Your tone should be calm and steady, not apologetic. If you hesitate or over-explain, it can make it seem like you're unsure of your boundaries, which invites pushback. When you're clear and concise, people are far more likely to accept your terms without argument. Body language plays a role too. Maintain eye contact. Keep your posture open and avoid fidgeting. You're sending a message not just through your words, but through your presence. I'm willing to help, but not at the cost of my own well-being. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. It turns awkward refusals into constructive conversations. It keeps relationships intact while ensuring you don't end up saying yes to something that drains you. Conditional language is about owning your time while still showing you care, and that balance is what makes it such a powerful tool in both professional and personal interactions. Offer a partial commitment. There are moments when you don't want to give a flat-out refusal, but you also know you can't take on the full weight of what's being asked. This is where offering a partial commitment becomes your best strategy. It's the middle ground between overextending yourself and walking away entirely. You're saying, "I can contribute, but only to this extent." And that's not a weak position. It's a strong one. It shows you're willing to help, but not at the cost of your own priorities, energy, or sanity. Too often, people fall into the trap of thinking that if they can't do it all, they shouldn't do anything. But the truth is, you can do something without doing everything. And that something can still have value. Let's say a coworker comes to you asking if you can lead a big project because they're overwhelmed. You know you don't have the bandwidth to manage the entire thing, but you could support them with certain parts of it. Instead of saying, "Sorry, I can't," you respond with, "I can't take on the full project, but I can help with creating the outline and reviewing the final draft." You've set limits, but you've also offered tangible support. That matters. It keeps the relationship positive and collaborative without putting you in a position where your own responsibilities suffer. In personal life, this works just as effectively. Imagine a friend asks if you can help them plan a major event. You don't have the time to handle the entire thing, but maybe you could manage a portion of it. You might say, "I can't take on all the planning, but I can help by booking the venue and organizing the invitations." You're still playing a role, but it's one you can handle without feeling stressed or resentful. This keeps your involvement enjoyable instead of draining, and it ensures you're not overcommitting out of guilt. The psychology behind this approach is powerful. When people make a request, they often think in all or nothing terms. They either want you completely in or they think you're out. Offering a partial commitment reframes that. It shows them another possibility. You can be in, just not all the way. Most people will gladly accept some help rather than none at all. And in many cases, that small piece you contribute might be exactly the part they needed most. Delivery is key here. You have to be confident and specific about what you can offer. Vague statements like, "I can help a little," leave too much room for interpretation, and that can lead to you taking on more than you intended. Instead, define your role clearly. "I can work on this portion, but I can't commit to more than that." Your tone should be steady, warm, and matter-of-fact. This isn't about apologizing for what you can't do. It's about stating what you can do and standing by it. Body language should reinforce your message. Keep your posture upright, make direct eye contact, and use an even pace when speaking. This communicates confidence, not hesitation. If you fidget, look away, or sound unsure, people might interpret your boundaries as negotiable. The clearer and more certain you are, the more respect you'll get for holding your limits. And here's another benefit. Partial commitments help you build a reputation for being dependable without being a pushover. People will know you contribute where you can, and when you agree to something, you follow through. Over time, this creates a healthy balance in your relationships. You're known as someone who helps in meaningful ways, but also someone who values their own time and energy enough to protect it. That balance is where trust and respect live. Silent pause with a smile. There's a certain power in saying nothing at all. Most people underestimate just how effective silence can be in a conversation, especially when you're being asked for something you don't want to do. We live in a world that fills every gap with noise, instant responses, quick explanations, constant justifications. But when you resist that urge and simply pause, holding a calm and steady presence, you shift the entire dynamic. That pause becomes your unspoken no, and paired with a composed smile, it delivers your message with quiet confidence instead of confrontation. Here's why it works. Silence makes people uncomfortable. When you don't jump in immediately with an answer, they start to fill that space themselves. They might soften their request, offer you an easier alternative, or even withdraw the ask entirely. You've given them room to reconsider without you ever having to reject them outright. The beauty is, it doesn't feel like you're pushing them away. It feels like they've come to that conclusion on their own. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone says, "Can you take this on as well?" Instead of answering right away, you look at them. Keep your expression neutral but pleasant, and let the moment breathe. Maybe you tilt your head slightly, still silent, and let them sit in it. More often than not, they'll follow up with something like, "Unless you've already got too much on your plate." Now they've given you the out, and you can simply nod and agree. You've protected your time without an argument, without excuses, and without even using the word no. This works in personal life too. Let's say a family member asks for a favor that you've been doing far too often. Instead of immediately saying yes or fumbling for a reason to decline, you pause, keep that small, polite smile, and let the silence do the heavy lifting. Maybe they realize they've been asking too much. Maybe they change the subject. Either way, you've communicated your hesitation without verbal resistance, and that makes the message easier for them to accept. But the key here is in the delivery. Your body language has to be deliberate. Keep your posture open and relaxed, maintain eye contact that is steady but not aggressive, and keep your expression soft. This isn't about intimidation, it's about self-assuredness. The smile is important because it diffuses any perception of hostility. Without it, your silence might feel cold or dismissive. With it, your silence feels composed, thoughtful, and in control. There's also a psychological reason this works so well. People are wired to interpret silence as significance. If you don't rush to fill the gap, they assume you're considering their request carefully, or that you have valid reasons for not accepting. Either way, it creates an unspoken authority. It tells them, without words, that you are someone who chooses deliberately, not impulsively. And in a world where so many people say yes just to keep the peace, that kind of presence commands respect. Body language and tone tips. How you say something often matters more than the words you choose. You can have the perfect boundary-setting phrase ready, but if your voice is shaky, your eyes dart away, or you over-apologize, you're sending a different message entirely. People read you before they hear you. That means your body language and tone must align with the confidence you want to project. When you decline a request, whether directly or indirectly, you want to look and sound like you mean it, without sounding harsh or defensive. Start with your eyes. Steady eye contact communicates that you're present, that you stand by your words, and that you have nothing to hide. You're not glaring or challenging the other person. You're simply rooted in your position. When you avoid eye contact, people instinctively feel uncertainty, and uncertainty invites persuasion. The moment they sense hesitation, they'll try to convince you otherwise. Eye contact shuts that door. Then there's your voice. Keep it calm, even, and unhurried. The speed and tone of your voice tell people if you're confident or uncomfortable. If you rush, you sound like you're trying to get it over with, which makes it seem negotiable. If your pitch rises at the end like a question, it signals doubt. Your tone should say, "This is my decision," not, "I hope you're okay with my decision." Speaking with a steady rhythm and controlled volume communicates authority without aggression. And stop over-apologizing. One genuine "sorry" is enough. Anything more starts to sound like you're seeking permission to protect your own boundaries. Apologizing excessively can also make you appear guilty, as if you've done something wrong by saying no. You haven't. You're simply making a choice about how to spend your time and energy. Your posture is part of the conversation too. Stand or sit upright, shoulders back, and avoid closing yourself off with crossed arms or slouched shoulders. This doesn't just make you look more confident. It actually makes you feel more confident, which helps your words land with greater impact. Remember your facial expression. A neutral, composed look or a slight, polite smile can soften your delivery without weakening it. You're not trying to overpower anyone. You're communicating with balance, firm in your stance, warm in your presence. When your words, tone, and body language are in sync, people rarely question your boundaries. They accept them. Setting boundaries is one of the most powerful skills you can develop, and yet it's one of the hardest for people to master. So many of us have been conditioned to believe that saying no is rude, selfish, or harmful. But here's the truth. Saying no doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you clear. It makes you deliberate. It makes you someone who understands the value of your own time, energy, and priorities. When you protect your limits, you're not pushing people away. You're showing them exactly where you stand. And in doing so, you build trust. People respect clarity far more than vague or hesitant compliance. They know that when you commit to something, it's because you truly want to, can manage it, and will follow through fully. That reliability is rare and powerful, and it elevates the way people perceive you in every sphere of your life. Think about it. The people who are most admired, whether in professional circles, social circles, or even within families, aren't the ones who say yes to every request. They're the ones who choose carefully what they take on. They understand that their time is finite, their energy is valuable, and their focus is sacred. And by making conscious choices about when to say yes and when to decline, they create space for what truly matters. They avoid burnout, they avoid resentment, and they maintain the quality of the commitments they do make. Their yeses carry weight, and their nos carry authority, because both are intentional. There's also a psychological benefit to maintaining these boundaries. When you set clear limits, you reduce stress, you stop overcommitting, stop feeling guilty for every declined request, and stop letting the opinions of others dictate your choices. Instead, you operate from a position of control. You make decisions based on what aligns with your priorities, not what others expect of you. This is empowering, and it transforms the way you interact with the world. People respond differently when you operate from strength rather than obligation. They notice your confidence, your self-respect, and your consistency. And that changes the dynamic of every relationship, every conversation, and every interaction. Another important point is that boundaries are not just about protecting yourself. They're about clarity for others as well. When you communicate your limits with confidence and tact, people know what to expect from you. They know when they can rely on you and when they need to seek solutions elsewhere. That clarity reduces misunderstandings, decreases conflict, and fosters healthier, more respectful relationships. It's a win-win scenario. You protect yourself, and you guide others in understanding how to work with you effectively. Ultimately, learning to say no, without saying the word, builds respect, trust, and balance in your life. It allows you to engage fully with the commitments you choose, protect your well-being, and preserve the quality of your interactions. Saying no doesn't diminish your character. It elevates it. It signals that you are someone who knows their worth, values their time, and honors their own boundaries while still remaining supportive, helpful, and compassionate toward others. When you master this skill, you become not just respected, but trusted, reliable, and unforgettable in every sphere of your life.